Do a brief tutorial on version 1 of the BuildCentrix online takeoff or assembly builder. Assuming your user has permission to create assemblies, when you log in and go to the product section, you're going to have a list of all your products like you normally see them. In this case, we're just going to use the basic pattern libraries available on BuildCentrix. And we'll start out by clicking on the assemblies link, and it's going to take you into the assembly module. At this point, you'll see a list of all the different assemblies we have. We have one in progress and a couple of new assemblies, or a couple of assemblies that are submitted. You can edit them, you can delete them, but for this tutorial, we'll add a new assembly. We're going to call it return error 1, 2, 3, and anything you want in here in the description. Once we've added the assembly, we can begin adding fittings. When you arrive here, you'll see the assembly name. You see the calculate. At any time you can hit the button and get a weight and price of the assembly. You've got a save button. When you're ready and everything's done, you'll hit the submit order, and it'll it'll package up your assembly and then send it into the calculation engine and off into production. You have an add fitting button, and you'll also have view mode button here. So we're going to start out, usually when I start out here, I'm going to start out by just adding my first fitting by clicking on the add fitting and then clicking rectangular. We're going to add some coil duct to begin with. As you can see, when you first arrive, it's going to tell you have 3 fields that need to be filled out. And you'll also see your width, depth, length there, and you'll also see all your manufacturing items. Also, you'll notice this is going to show you on the canvas the total height of the assembly, the total length, and the total width. At any time, you're able to add fittings, so it's not a problem. But for your first fitting, what you want to do is basically start out with your main dimensions, which in this case are going to be 30, and we'll just call it 17. And it's using duct standards that are set up on this deployment, so now it's changed my connectors to TDF. So and there's all my materials. So if you're building if you want to change pressure classes, or you're making an assembly that has specific changes, whether it's the pressure class or the materials, you can select all that on your first fitting, and then all the other fittings you click onto this fitting will inherit those properties. That way you don't have to constantly reset what you're making them out of. So at this point, I'm ready to go. First thing I'm going to do is use my scroll button on my mouse, and I'm going to zoom out a bit so that I can so that I have more room, and I'm going to click left click and hold down on one of the joint ends, the green dot or the blue dot, the nodes there, and I'm going to move my first fitting out of the way, because all my new fittings are going to end up in this access point. So if you just start and keep going, it gets really, it's very difficult to separate all the fittings. So we just move them aside and start building before I start building my assembly. At this point, I'm going to add my next fitting, which is going to be a transition. So I'm just going to click on that link. Now this time, you can see I've got a bunch of fields to fill out, but I don't really have to do too much right off the gate. I'm going to scroll out a bit. I'm going to grab my node here by clicking my left mouse button, holding onto it, and I'm going to drag it to the end of the duct that I'm going to join it to, and I'm going to release it, the mouse button, and then you'll see it's now inherited all the materials. So it's galvanized 2 pressure class. It's also inherited the width and depth on the end there, and it's going to show me I've got 7 more fields to fill out. And if I want to make any changes, now's the time. So I'm basically going to start on this and do 25 by 14, and I'm going to make that 42 inches long. And I'm going to put my extensions at 2 inches, and I'm going to make it flat left so that the duct is flat left on the width offset, and then on the depth offset I'm going to go top up by about 6 inches. So that gives me my piece. Now my next piece is done. I'm ready to add my next piece. So I'm going to add a fitting from here. And I'm going to add my square T. Again, lots of fields to fill out. Typically, the first thing I'm going to do is go grab the joint. It doesn't always have to be J1. Typically, it always is. But you can also attach this different fittings to J2 or J3. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to drop my T right onto the end of my transition. It's going to snap in place. It's also warning me right now that there's an error, and it's mostly because it doesn't know all the information about the square T yet, but with the information it does know, those connectors can be slip and drive. This one does not have to be TDF, so it's just warning me that, hey, this fitting's TDF, but it's TDF because that's what the transition was, so it's going to inherit the joint, but we can leave this because S&D is going to be fine based on the information we're going to put for our both sides of the T. So I can get rid of that right now, and I can enter my left width, which is going to be 15. My right width is going to be 14. Bottom extension's 8, and I'm going to go 8s on everything else. Oh, and I'm going to add my air turns to that right now. Now you can see it's moved out there. Anytime you can click on the canvas, anywhere in the canvas, and hold down your right mouse button and drag the camera to get a better view of the fitting. So you can do that at any time. Now I've got everything done for this connector. Now I want to add another fitting, and I'm going to add an elbow, but this time I kind of want to go up. I don't want to go sideways, I want to go up vertically. So I'm just going to pick my elbow, and I don't have to do anything at this point. I'm just going to drag my J1 and I'm going to connect it to my J3 by just doing this, and it's going to auto fit, rotate itself, and it's going to inherit 2 dimensions. It's missing some dimensions. So what I'm going to do right now, because I want to go up, is I'm going to rotate my fitting. So now I've rotated my fitting, and I'm going to make sure everything looks really good. Very nice, 14 by 14, looks really good. Sometimes if this was wider, it won't work because it was already clicked and it already had set the dimensions. If that's the case, so it's not fitting perfectly, you can select it, drag it back, and then re-click it, and it'll update your any dimensions like that. So I'm going to do a 15 on this end, and I'm going to do an 8 on the throat extension there. Now, typically I'm going to add my next piece of duct, and it's really the same way. I'm just going to add a short piece of duct to this, which is basically CID1, and I'm just going to go vertically. Again, it's the same thing. This time it wants to go up. So all I have to do in this particular case is drag my green dot for my J1, drop it onto here. It's going to flip the fitting up and inherit the values, and then all I have to do is put it, I want it 36 inches long, and that's it. So now I can look at my assembly and say it's 67 inches high, it's 120 inches long, and it's 61 inches wide. Everything is about where I want. Now I want to submit it. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is run a calculation on it, and it's going to kick an error out. And it's going to tell me that there's a required input that's missing. Please check for fitting number 4. So I'm going to go click on fitting number 4. I'm going to get rid of this notification, and I'm going to go, right, I forgot to put in that on purpose. And I'm going to add my extension onto that, and I'm going to look at that, and it all looks good to me. So at this point, sorry about that, I'm ready, and I'm going to submit my order. So the first thing I'm going to do, hit submit, and okay. So now it's saving the assembly, it's packaging everything up in the system, and getting ready to put it into the calculation engine, and get it prepped by loading the shopping cart in BuildCentrix. Now, the bigger the orders, the longer this may take. This order only had 5 pieces on it, didn't take very long, but if you've got a very large order, it's going to take a while to process, calculate, and get everything packaged up. At this point, if you wanted to add things like TDF corners or slips and drives or a bucket of duct sealer, you could add that to your order. For this tutorial, we're not going to. We're just going to head to the checkout. It's regular, just like all other orders. You're going to put who measured it. We'll put our test job in here. We're going to put the tag in here, which is going to say return anything you want. Return air assembly. And I'm going to pick my date. And then everything's good to go, so I'm just going to submit. When you hit submit, it's also going to load 2 attachments, the top view of your assembly and an isometric view of your assembly, so that in the shop the fabricators can see exactly what you want done. So we'll just click the submit button and you'll see on the screen they're loaded up and now the order's processed. If you want to go look at your order, you can click on your work orders. It's going to take you to the latest order we put in here. We can click on the order details. We also can see that there's 2 images attached to this. So at this point I can see there's an isometric view of my assembly attached to this. And there's a top view as well so that everybody can see what's being built. They'll also have your regular itemized list as well of all the components in there and the CAM export and everything required for the shop as usual. So there's my itemized list of what we just got. So that's basically what submitting an order on version 1 of the BuildCentrix assembly builder or online takeoff are at. If you have any questions or feedback, please email support@buildcentrix.com or call us directly at 855-932-3828. Thanks for your time watching this tutorial.